It's a good day to brew, baby. What is up, YouTube? It's your boy, Millsy, back at the Hometown Commander, and we are back for another episode of Millsy Brews, the show where I brew my version 1.0 deck list for the commander in front of me for you on my quest to outbrew your favorite Magic channel. Millsy Brews is a show where I do this for you in the hopes that you'll enjoy the camaraderie of brewing with me. Deck list is down in the description if you don't care about hearing me ramble on. I'm going to go card by card through the list in front of me, talk about interactions, why cards are being played, and what the thought process is. If you want to learn a little bit more about the commander in front of you, whether you're using my list or you have your own list and you want to just see some card recommendations, I think that's the one thing I do a lot, is looking at other people's lists for cards that they're playing that I'm not, and why, figuring out interactions, how the cards works in the decks. We live in the EDH rec culture where cards just get slammed on a screen and people think that they're good, but my hope is that you realize that decks have interactions, they have nitty-gritties. And that's what I'm trying to do here, is show you how I want the deck to function and then give you it as an opportunity to do what you want with it. Use it as inspiration, copy my deck list, make it better, whatever it may be. But today we're talking about another commander in a long line of Jeskai commanders that make me want to build them. I have a very love-hate relationship with Kaikar Wind's Fury. It's a commander that I've been trying to make the exact way I've wanted to make it for a long time. And I saw this card get leaked, of course, during the massive leaking. Wizards don't send the Pinkertons to me, but I saw this card and I was like, man, this actually kind of fits what I want a little bit more. I actually had been brewing around the original Narset Enlightened Master, and it's a fun commander, but I think it gets pigeonholed into the exact strategy you expect from that commander. So what I like about this is it kind of marries everything I wanted to do with Kaikar with everything I wanted to do with Narset. So let's talk about it. Narset Enlightened Exile, 1 in a Jeskai for a 3/4 human monk. Creatures you control have Prowess, so whenever you cast a non-creature spell, a creature with prowess gets +1/+1 until end of turn for each non-creature spell cast, not copy, just cast. And then whenever it attacks, exile target non-creature, non-land card with mana value less than Narset's power from a graveyard and copy it. You may cast the copy without paying its mana cost. Non-creature, non-land card with mana value less than Narset's power from any graveyard and copy it, not just ours, anyone's, and pay it. So Narset's trying to do two things. We're trying to take advantage of the prowess by going wide with tokens and creatures, and then we're going to try to pump her up as well so that we can use that bottom ability to cast some things out of the graveyard. I'm going to say really quickly that I have a version of this deck that I built for myself, and it has a lot more of the extra turns, extra combat strategies, shenanigans like the original Narset did. I tried to strip out a ton of that from this deck because I know that's not what everybody wants from a deck like this. But if you're interested in knowing some of the cards I brought in for my list, I will try to remember to put a link down in the description to my version of list this, so you can see where the difference of that is, and hopefully you can see where the differences lie and maybe how the deck runs. But again, for the purpose of this deck, what we're trying to do today is go wide with tokens, go wide with little creatures or tokens or creature tokens, or even just regular creatures. Buff them up with prowess, and then slam through, and also use Narset to kind of give us more of an advantage. I think the land base is pretty average here. I like the good mix. We're playing a lot of the great lands. I decided to bring in the bounce lands because I feel like they do us a lot of good here. Brought in the pathways, which were a little bit abnormal for but I think Jeskai gets to use a little bit more of it, and we're playing all 3 of the temples. And the reason we're playing the pathways, which I don't brew a ton with on my own, is because we're not playing with any artifact synergies, so we don't need as many of those artifacty type lands. But I thought temples are fun, the pathways are fun. Just thought I'd bring in some different lands. But let's get into the enchantments, and this is where we're going to start talking about what I like to call that Jeskai token value. This is where we get into a lot of the cards that make Jeskai really fun, and that first card is Jeskai Ascendancy. Jeskai Ascendancy is one of the single most important enchantments, or I would just say non-land cards in this deck. In general, it has 2 abilities, and the first one is bonkers. Whenever you cast a non-creature spell, creatures you control get +1/+1 until end of turn, untap those creatures. This card is in here so that we can try to play some convoke strategies. We'll talk about Invasion of Scovia up top. We have something like City of Fire here as well. But Jeskai Ascendancy works because we can tap our creatures to try to convoke spells or do different things with them, and then untap them with Jeskai Ascendancy every time we cast a spell. I love it. I love it. I love it. I love this card. And then the bottom, whenever you cast a spell, we can draw a card if we do discard cards. We can kind of cycle through our hand. And I like this because then we can put something in our graveyard to cast later with Narset if we want to. So we talked about convokes. Let's talk about City on Fire, a card that we want to convoke because it says whenever a source you control will deal damage to a permanent or player, it deals triple that damage. This is one of those things we want to get down ASAP because if we have it, because all of our 2/2s turns into really, in all reality, 6/6s right if they get through. City on Fire is just such a fun card. I love this card from March of the Machine, and if you can get it and you can get it running, I feel like this is one of those cards that's just going to beat over your opponents. The other best part is we can get something like Aqueous Form on Narset. Narset then can't be blocked, and with the City of Fire out, we could potentially just hit somebody out with commander damage. Noted Procession is going to double the amount of tokens we make, and we're trying to make a ton of tokens because we're playing Metallurgic Summonings, we're playing Shark Typhoon, we're playing a couple creatures when we get up top that make tokens. So here we go. We're casting spells. We're getting tokens. What I like about Metallurgic Summonings and Shark Typhoon are they both have a chance to trigger when we cast something with Narset. Of course, Metallurgic Summonings only triggers off instant and sorceries. Shark Typhoon triggers off any non-creature spells. So more often than not, we're going to trigger either or both of these depending on what we cast. But I like this because it's going to give us tokens to block, or for the case of Shark Typhoon, some pretty evasive tokens that are going to help us attack. Rhystic Study for the draw, and Whirlwind of Thought for draw. Whenever you cast a non-creature spell, draw a card. I love this because even when we cast something from our opponent's graveyards, or we do something with Narset, we're still casting, which still is going to draw us a card. We get to play Roar Resistance, one of my favorite new red enchantments from the last set. Not March of the Machine, I mean from Exile Obi-Wan. Creature tokens you control have haste. Well, here we go. This plus Jeskai Ascendancy is probably just going to lead to a ton of fun. Dump out a bunch of spells, get a bunch of tokens with Shark Typhoon or our different token producers, and they all can go into combat attack. And then it says whenever one of our creatures you control attack, you can pay one in a red. If you do, creatures attacking your opponents or planeswalkers they control get +2/+0 until end turn. So for 2 mana, we can flat +2/+0 buff anything. This plus Balmor, Battle Mage Captain, which we're playing up top, and the creatures is going to lead to a terrible time for our opponents because Balmor, as soon as we cast one spell, gives all of our creatures trample. And so what that is basically going to do is just, we could potentially pair it with this Roar Resistance and potentially just stomp over our opponents for a good time. And then we're playing the Tithe for some mana. I really like this enchantment suite. I think it feels really good. There's every enchantment in this suite does something we want it to do, and it feels great. Getting up into the artifacts, we're playing all 3 talismans, all 3 signets, Arcane Signet, Midnight Clock, Soul Ring for our mana. I love Midnight Clock. It's a card that more blue decks should play because it gives you the blue mana, but then after 4 turns, or 3 turns around the table of a normal commander game, you get to shuffle your hand in your graveyard back into your library and draw a fresh 7. This could potentially get you some cards back, but in all reality, what tends to happen in most Jeskai decks is you dump your hand out and you have nothing left. Midnight Clock is just going to get it back for you, and I like that. Midnight Clock exiles itself, so you can't loop it, but I do like it. And then we're playing Lithform Engine and Stronic Resonator. The reason is both of them have 2 copy target activated or triggered ability. Now that would... actually does. I apologize. Narset doesn't say once per turn. So every time Narset attacks, we can get that ability. Both Lithform Engine and Stronic Resonator can copy that ability. I just like Lithform Engine because for 3, we can copy an instant or sorcery, and for 4, we can copy a permanent spell. So both of them give us really good options. Of course, Lithform costs just a teeny bit more to get down than Stronic Resonator, but I think both are more than worth it because both have a ton of upside. Getting up into the spells, in the instance, we're playing a lot of removal and then a lot of protection. So the fun part about that we have to remember about these spells is we get to do these on attack and not on damage, which means that if we can play a spell that advances us in combat, like a Chroma's Will, for example, that could potentially end a game. So creatures you control can gain Flying, Vigilance, and Double Strike, and then Lifelink, Indestructible, and Protection from all colors. That will probably end a game, because then that means they're basically unblockable, and then depending on how wide our board is, if we have Balmor going, if we have the different things going, that could just potentially end a game. Leap can give Narset Flying until end of turn and draw a card. This can get us out of some of our potential hurt when it comes to Narset getting blocked and potentially killed. Boros Charm can give all of our things indestructible. Clever Concealment is more of a defensive card than it is an offensive card, but worst case scenario, we could phase out all of our permanents. More often than not, we're going to keep this in hand, use our tokens to convoke it out and to protect our board, but Flawless Maneuver could be used in combat, right? Give our whole board indestructible. Jeskai Charm seems like a really fun card. We could put the creature back on the top of the library or deal damage. What I really like is that bottom ability. Creatures you control get +1/+1 and gain life like on the turn. Well, if we have a wide board of tokens, whether they get blocked or not, we're just going to gain a ton of life. So I love Jeskai Charm, and it feels right to play this in Narset because, again, Narset's so well tied to the Jeskai clan on Tarkir. Brainstorm for some draw, E-Tutor, because we have a lot of things that we want to go get. And so I think this is a really fair choice here to go get things like Swiftfoot Boots if we want to get Narset attacking right away. Jeskai Ascendancy if we want to get that value going. Love this, and it can hit our hand early. Mystical Tutor can go get anything in this category. I like the Tutor a lot for one of our extra combat spells, which we'll talk about in a second, or like Slips Through Space or Leap. I just really like it. It can go get it loaded up on top, get it ready to go, and then Rapid Hybrid Reality Shift and Plowshares for some removal, and then Teferi's Protection for some more protection. Getting up into the sorceries, Faithless Looting, Ponder, and See the Truth for some draw. Explosive Iteration does draw, but it also kind of helps us play some things as well. Love that. Relentless Assault and Seize the Day are our extra combat spells. The best part about these is we use them after combat and then get into another combat, and then Narset can play them to get another combat if need be. So we can kind of use them at the right time to jump actually a couple extra combats, or just use them incrementally as we go through and we hit our opponents. Slips Through Space can make Narset unblockable, which is kind of great depending on how big it is. It could knock them out with commander damage, solve the equation, searches for some things, and then Surge to Victory is a really fun card. Exile target instant or sorcery from your graveyard. Creatures you control get +X/+0 until end turn where X is that card's mana value, and then whenever a creature you control deals combat damage to a player, copy that exiled card. You may cast the copy without paying its mana cost. This could potentially copy one of those extra combat spells and probably just end the game outright because you get, I don't know, 5, 6, 4, 3. I mean, you think about it, if you get a bunch of those tokens through, you could potentially get 10 or 12 extra copies of the extra combats. Now, in the little bit more nefarious version, you pick a time warp, you pick something like that, and now you're taking that many extra turns that you can kind of see where Surge to Victory kind of just takes the strategy and ramps it upward. I love Surge to Victory. It's a fun card. It's a card that I got to experience a lot in my Ovika list, which you can see back on the channel, but I think it does so much better here. Getting up into the creatures, and we get to play a pretty fun mix of creatures. Balmor, that we talked about earlier, whenever you cast instant or sorcery, creatures you control get +1/+0 and gain trample to a turn. What I like about that ability is that, let's say we need to set up on our main one. We don't have an instant or sorcery to play before combat. We declare in our attacks. We play an instant or sorcery with Narset. Bang, +1/+0 and trample. So I like that because we can get into combat and really still get some benefit. Chrome Host Seed Shark, where we cast a non-creature spell, Incubate X, where X is that spell's mana value. I like this. It can make us those artifacts, which tap for certain abilities, but then we can flip them over into creatures and hit with them. So I like that. And Seed Shark isn't a bad blocker in its own right. We get Kenra's Spell Spear, which looks pretty mediocre on the front side, just a 2/2 with Prowess. But for 4 mana, it turns into a Phyrexian Jackal with double Prowess, Trample, and Ward 2. And we really want that on the backside. Double Prowess. It's going to become a hard creature to deal with, having Trample as well. This card is, like I said, looks really dumb on the front side. Once you get it to that backside, it's going to be fun to deal with. Kaikar, of course, needs to be in here. It's going to give us the spirits, help us go wide. Same thing with Monastery Mentor, right? Get us those tokens, go wide, and then Monastery Mentor actually makes monks with Prowess. So with Narset out, those monks will actually have double Prowess. Same thing with Monastery Mentor. It'll have double Prowess, which will make them a lot better in combat. And then we kind of another way to give our creatures prowess, although it's pseudo prowess because it's only instant or sorceries, but we have Leonin Light Scribe. So whenever you cast an instant or sorcery, creatures you control get +1/+1 until end of turn. So this is kind of fun because this is another target. This is giving everyone that flat buff. Mondrak to double the tokens. Ovika, every time we cast a non-creature spell, we get tokens. X11 tokens, where X is that spell's mana value. They gain haste. This is kind of fun because if we're in one of those infinite combats or those big combat loops with Narset and we get an Ovik out for the next combat, we have that many more Gobos that we can attack with. So I think Ovik is fun. Yes, it is 7 mana. It's hard to get up to, but Ovik is one of those cards that once you stick it and once you keep it on the battlefield, it is not fun to deal with. Stormkill Artist making us treasures when we cast spells. And I like it is it's cast or copy. So because you have a couple cards in the deck that care about copying things, Stormkill Artist is going to give us a bunch of value. Third Path Iconoclast, making us tokens every time we cast a non-creature spell. So perfect. Get tokens that way. Varen's going to double all of our Prowess triggers. It's going to double all of our Magecraft triggers. So I love this. This is one of those cards that like is probably just going to get out of hand because if you think about it, Prowess is going to go off twice, which is just going to make our creatures bigger and bigger and bigger. And so what I kind of like about Varen is, yes, we're going to have a bunch of some potential Magecraft things that we do in our main phase, but we get into combat, attack with Narset, cast the spell, and now everyone gets +2/+2 before blocks even go off, and that could potentially price someone out of blocking. That could potentially, with Balmor, with Trample, just get us into a position to just run someone over. I think this is one of those things that we can kind of keep in the back of our head as we're planning out our attack, and then as we cast that spell, as we get into combat, take true advantage of it. And then Wildfire Awakener, I really like this card. This card seems really cool. This was from the Convoke precon. It says, it enters the battlefield, create X11 red elemental creature tokens with whenever this creature becomes tapped, deals 1 damage to target player. I like this because we can use our tokens to tap to convoke this, right? Hopefully we have a Jeskai Ascendancy out so that everything untaps and we can attack with them. But think about it. All of those tokens have, when it tapped, to deal 1 damage to target player. Well, of course, City on Fire can triple that. But in all reality, it doesn't have to deal 1 damage to the player it attacked. So what you could really do with all those tokens is attack someone else, put the damage to somebody else. You can see this gives you just another little thing to kind of move around and a piece to deal with when it comes to that. 4 Planeswalkers, and mainly just because 3 of them make a ton of sense, and one's just there for some fun. Jaya, Fiery Negotiator, makes a 1/1 with Prowess on its +1, and then lets you play some cards on its other +1. The -2 says choose target creature an opponent controls. Whenever you attack this turn, this deals damage equal to the number of attacking creatures to that creature. This could take out someone's big creature out of the way for combat. And then -8 says we get an emblem whenever you cast a red instant or sorcery, copy it twice. You may choose new targets for the copy. So this is kind of great if we can +1 and get a bunch of tokens with Prowess. We could potentially -8 and again help us on that combat train. Saheeli makes a bunch of servo tokens, which helps us so much with our convoking things. And then we can make one of those servos into another artifact, depending on what we need to do. Teferi makes 2/2 spirits. They get bigger whenever we draw cards, and he gets bigger whenever we draw cards. And then that -12 is kind of like a pseudo Cyclonic Rift, but instead of everything going to hand, they pick one thing to go hand in their hand, and everything else gets shuffled in. And then Teferi Time Reveler's really just here to help us hopefully stop our opponents from dealing with us on our turn. It says each opponent can cast spells only at any time they could cast a sorcery, which will be at no point on our turn. So the hope here is that this can shut down our opponents from interacting with Narset on our turn and allowing us to just push our strategy forward, push our advantage forward. And then we're playing 2 battles. I'd love to know down in the comments, are you guys playing battles? Are you guys using battles in your list? I think I'm trying to use battles when they feel the most appropriate. And for Narset, I thought really it was 2. I mean, Segovia for sure. We'll talk about Segovia in a second. But let's play an Invasion over Gotham. And there's a battlefield, just 4 damage to another target battle or opponent, and 1 damage up to 1 target creature. Well, that's great. Very seldom are we going to see Goth and Segovia at the same time. So most time that 4 is going to go to an opponent. A 1 goes to a creature. But we're playing lots of tokens. We're playing lots of creatures. It's going to be easy to flip. The backside, we get Disciples of the Inferno, a human monk with Prowess. So we see another creature with Prowess. And whenever a non-creature source you control that would deal damage to a creature, battle, or opponent, it deals that much +2 instead. So we don't have a ton of these abilities, but it has Prowess, and it's a 4/4. So again, it's a decent body, and I don't think we mind... because the front side is a non-creature spell, so it's going to get us a bunch of other things, right? It'll trigger all of our other cards. And on the back side, it's creature with Prowess. And then Segovia coming in and getting us 2 Krakens, and on the backside, everything has Convoke, and then we can untap 4 creatures on our end step. I love Segovia. It's one of my favorite battles from this set, especially in these Convoke decks where you get to use your creatures to cast spells. I love Invasion of Segovia. If you're not playing it and you have a deck like this, Baum or Uvika, Galazeth, decks like that, you should be checking out Segovia. I really like it. I think it works really well. I'd be actually kind of intrigued to see if maybe some more like Azorius style decks, token decks would play it, if you could see it in, I don't know, would a Knight's deck run it? You know, there's plenty of other ways you could think about a card like this. But what do you guys think of Narset? Again, I'm going to put in the description the link to my list. Again, I looked at this one versus the old Narset, and I said, I think I like this one a little bit more fun. Yes, I can take it to a little bit more of the unsultry route that Enlightened Master gets played, but I like that it is at least a little bit more controlled. The problem with Enlightened Master, right, the old Narset, is you just exile the top 4 and you have to play any of them that you want. The thing I like about this is I can manipulate what's in my graveyard. When I can play spells and then play them again out of my graveyard. So I kind of like that. I like that. I like that you can kind of play the spell first, get it into your graveyard, and then play it again out of your graveyard with Narset, and you take more advantage of it that way. So I just think there's more fun to be had when you can control what's in your graveyard to get played. And then the best part of this one is we can play our opponent's things. So it's not like we only have to play our things. We can also play our opponent's things. But I think whenever you have a chance to play your opponent's things, you need to plan to have things of your own to play and not be so reliant on what your opponents have if you want to play your deck well. And I think Narset does that. But let me know what you think down in the comments. Like if you like Narset, like if you like token decks, if you like Jeskai spells. This is just it's an archetype that I really love, and I think Narset's going to get the play over Kaikar for me for the moment, because I want to see if this deck kind of does a little bit more than I want it to do. But let me know what you think down in the comments. Subscribe if you want to catch some more videos, and I will catch you next time.